and welcome along to our latest video update on key areas of primary care finance. This month we're looking at costing up services. With financial pressures mounting and limited resources available, it's a great opportunity to look at your costings for any of your new services or any existing services. When a practice is deciding to undertake a new service, you're best to run the costings to make sure that it's a viable source of income. It is also really important to think about your patient care and providing value to your patients. You want to make sure that each service is making a profit and not running at a loss and costing practice money. It is also a good opportunity to look at your ongoing services and to see if any changes need making. The best way to looking at the costings is using a simple spreadsheet. Now, we love a spreadsheet here at Rayleigh, and it really doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Later on, we'll look at a basic example and also a more detailed example, so you can see how easily it actually is to complete. There are several key factors to consider when costing out a new service, and the largest component is always looking at staffing. And you always need to make sure the right person is completing the right job. For example, you ideally don't want a practice nurse completing tasks that can be completed by an HCA. If you're using a service that is using GP time, please remember that using a locum or even backfilling with a locum tends to be a more expensive method. We also often see practices using a specific locum for a service such as minor surgery. Now, this may not always be profitable, however, it means patients are being seen and not seen elsewhere. So hopefully, happy patients. Now, let's have a look at a basic example for phlebotomy. We're going to start out with a simple spreadsheet, which helps us easily change any of the figures. If each phlebotomy appointment takes 10 minutes, that would mean 12 appointments can take place in a 2-hour clinic. The amount of appointments on offer might vary per clinic, and we will look at that impact shortly. You receive £4.38 per procedure, meaning for those 12 appointments in that 2-hour clinic, you would receive £52.56. If you use a phlebotomist, this would be about £14 an hour, an HCA about £16, and a practice nurse, say £25 an hour. Now, you'll need to calculate the on-cost for this staff, which are 14.38% for employer's pension and 15% employer's NI after the first £5,000. Always assume the staff are in the NHS pension scheme and therefore use the employer's pension rate rather than a lower percentage, for example, if they're in the NEST scheme. To keep things simple, let's use a total on-cost of 30%. This means a phlebotomist would be £18.20 an hour, HCA £20.80, and a nurse would be £32.50 an hour. In this example, we've used a 2-hour clinic and therefore staff pay will be for those 2 hours. You're also going to use some consumables, and in our example, we're using £5 for the 2-hour clinic. Now you can see that the phlebotomist is a more profitable way of working, and the practice nurse actually is making a loss on the service. Now, if we take the example from before and look at how many appointments are on offer in a 2-hour clinic, you can see that increasing the number of appointments just by 2 per clinic would increase profit to £19.92 from £11.16, which is an increase of £8.76. Now, this is a very basic example. It doesn't take in consideration such items as admin time for booking the appointments or general overheads or premises costs. This is a good thing about using a spreadsheet, that you can add or take away as many variable or fixed figures as you wish. We'll look at a more detailed example later on with some of these additional costs. Now, let's look at some more things to consider when costing out a new service. If you are offering a completely new service, do you need some training or qualifications to cover a specific skill? Is this initial training or does it require regular updates? Equally, do you need to purchase some specific software to this service? You're going to be using some consumables, supplies and equipment. These often can be quite pricey, so make sure you're shopping around for the best price. If you are buying new equipment, it's worth looking into if they need yearly updates or yearly or 2-yearly upgrades. Have you got enough room for completing a new service, especially if you need specialist equipment or a special room, such as a minor surgery room? You should make sure you are getting the most out of each room, and tight space can be tight, especially if you're hosting Rs or PCN staff. If you have a specific clinic on, say a couple of mornings a week, are these being fully used up, or can you change these clinics to a general appointments? Again, you need to look at your patient needs and can you combine some of these services? For example, if an HCA is taking some bloods, can they also complete some other services in the appointment to help towards those QOF points? Now we're going to look at a more detailed example using some more variable costs, and this is often when things get a bit tricky. It's also important to note that some of these costs that you calculate might not actually alter depending on the service, for example, premises costs. We're going to look at wound care income, which is £19.8 per procedure. In this example, we're going to focus on each service, not necessarily what's offered in a clinic. So for each appointment, it's going to take roughly 20 minutes. So based on this, staff cost will be about £10.83, which is nurse time at £25 an hour plus 30% on cost. And they could probably complete 3 in an hour. Consumables will for dressings, bandages, gloves, tape, etc. would roughly be about £4. Room premises usage about £3. General overhead, excluding the premises, £2. Clinical waste disposal would be about £1. Admin time for booking appointments, updating records, etc. £2. Equipment usage about £2. So the actual cost for this appointment would be £24.83. So this is meaning that each service will be running at a loss of £5.75. Of course, when you look at this for your own practice, you could break down the cost into more detail by looking at the actual cost of what things are based on your invoices. Some of the costs we have, or what you will have, don't necessarily have a breakdown for each service. Then it might be based on a monthly nominal amount, regardless of the usage you use. For example, clinical waste might not cost any more based on the level of usage. It's really important to remember it's not always about the cost of the services. Patient care is really important in ensuring you offer the right services for your patients. And also, you don't want to take that time away from the core services. Sometimes completing additional services can help towards QOF points, even if the service is not as profitable as others. Remember, keep the calculations simple and don't overcomplicate things. If we can support you or your practice in any way, or you would like some further details on cost and services, please do get in touch.